So the Herald, there's no specific back page, an ad for furniture. Cork's inside pair using deadly telepathy. So this is Conor McKeown's piece talking about how the inside forwards for the Dubs are actually the best inside forwards that they've faced so far in the championship, and so therefore there might be something going down on Saturday evening. Donegal and Mayo, big threat to Dublin, says Joe Kernan. So what's happening with Mayo? I don't know what's happening with Mayo. I can't tell. And then obviously Dundalk to rely on away form as Latvians hold on for European stalemate. Not the best European performance we've ever seen from Dundalk last night against Riga. No draw.
I'm going to start with the Irish Daily Star this morning. Embarrassing, reads the back page. Cavanagh says leaked rebel song, a clumsy mistake. No Oriel spark for Dundalk, meanwhile, as a headline on that. Frank's daily grind, Frank Lampard there in Phibsborough last night. And Ole sure De Gea will stay. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer says he is positive David De Gea will end the uncertainty over his future and sign a new deal. We'll get in depth into the Irish Daily Star in just a moment.
Can Riga come out and play? Perth, we were up against the back six. Laois feel-good factor won't last long in hurling's uneven playing field. That's Babs Keating predicting one-way traffic at the weekend. A tune-up for Bruce. Steve Bruce held talks with Newcastle as he closed in on his dream job. Inter looks likely now. Romelu Lukaku's move to Inter Milan is edged a step closer because they've made a bid, a stage bid apparently, 9 million, 20 million and 20 million, was that it? Something around that? 9 million up front anyway. The Bows foil Frank. Bows won, Chelsea won. Great goal for Bows last night against Chelsea, and cheered to the rafters as well, so it wasn't just Chelsea fans at Daily Night last night.
Back page of the Irish Independent is workload not an issue for fired up Laois, says Critchley. So this is regarding this weekend's game against Tipperary. They're expecting the largest hurling crowd for a Laois match in 34 years at the weekend. Michael Verney writing as well that Leinster has 2021 hurling vision. This is regarding the potential expansion of the Leinster Hurling Championship. Jim Bulger insisting any plan would not come into effect until 2021. If passed, the expansion would be to 6 teams, we're all saying, but Verney's mentioning the possibility of an 8-team championship split into 2 groups of 4, which might actually dilute the Leinster Hurling Championship from the quality we've seen, but maybe it's more important to actually have more teams involved. And McIlroy drawing on home comforts for Open Challenge, so this is Rory McIlroy pleasantly surprised to feel right at home at Royal Portrush after reacquainting himself with the venue for next week's Open.
Rory's pride. McIlroy says he wouldn't swap with Koepka. Rory McIlroy says he's proud of his performances this year and would not trade his season for that of world number 1 Brooks Koepka, who retained the USPGA Championship and finished runner-up at the Masters and the US Open. Look, you read these comments and they always seem spicy from McIlroy, and then you hear them and you're like, oh, okay, he wasn't being spicy at all, he was just being Rory. I look at what I've done this year and I'm proud of my body of work. I think peaking for majors is a bit of a myth. You're trying to play well every week. I wouldn't trade with Koepka. I look at Brooks at the majors and think, wow, if he produced that sort of stuff every week, it'd be tough to compete with. Why he doesn't, I've no idea. But he obviously puts more emphasis on majors.
Yeah, because he's a big-time player. Because he realises that the majors are major. They are the main events on the calendar, and he is somebody who doesn't get carried away with the pressure of it. He actually just thrives under that pressure.
When I try that, it almost goes the other way. I need to relax to play my best golf.
It may be as simple as that. Rory McIlroy just loves golf more than Brooks Koepka. In fact, I would bet a lot of money on the fact that Rory McIlroy actually enjoys golf more than Brooks Koepka.
I would say neither of them enjoys it that much anymore. It's a gig for them.
Well, how can you enjoy it after that amount of time? Brooks Koepka certainly doesn't enjoy it.
So the back page lead on the other back page lead, which I'm surprised wasn't the main lead on the Daily Mail this morning, is "We did right thing by signing Jackson. Kiss." London Irish head coach Les Kiss insists the majority of London Irish fans support the decision to sign Paddy Jackson and said it was the right thing to do. So there's a few quotes here from him. Obviously, Diageo have ended its long-standing sponsorship with the club. Kiss insists the only consideration in recruiting him was his playing ability. I think there is more support than not. That's my view. First and foremost, Paddy is a good rugby player and it's an opportunity for him to further his career. People will have their opinions on the backstory in the past, but we believe what we are about and we believe we are doing the right thing. I know Paddy, he's a quality footballer, that's what we're focused on. It's a rugby club looking for good players and we have signed Paddy. These are the quotes from Les Kiss, and that's all. It obviously was at some kind of press conference yesterday for this, and so funnily enough, that was the first place I've seen it. I don't think it's in the. He said it wasn't in the version of certainly the edition of the Indo that we got this morning, but it's now on their website, and the comments are being picked up, and it's just going to be very difficult, I think, for London Irish to continue to trot out this line. Like, I don't know. It seems as if London Irish have kind of missed how public opinion is on this matter. And I don't think this is a story that's going away anytime soon, because it used to be things would blow over, but things don't blow over anymore. That's not how the world works. Like, the WhatsApps that emerged during that trial will never disappear. They will constantly follow those players around for the rest of their career. And when you say that you're signing somebody who's you're just about rugby, that's not how the world works anymore. We all leave our trace on social media, and we all leave our views out there, and when those views become public, then that's what people think of you. So that's what people are going to think of London Irish, and Les Kiss is today saying London Irish are fine with that.
Well, like, he talks about signing a rugby player and a rugby player alone, and that's all they're focused on, but he says that I understand this becomes a story, but ultimately we want to make sure we focus on the right things. So he's focusing on the right thing, focusing on rugby and rugby alone. And he says, as you mentioned there, we believe what we are about. Like, what are London Irish about? Is it just about signing a rugby player, not looking beyond that into the person that the player is, or whatever it may be? So it's an interesting one. It's obviously a kind of a disastrous situation for Les Kiss to kind of get into when it comes to speaking out loud about it. But he's obviously given his thoughts, and I mean, the thoughts of London Irish right now is that we're focused on the rugby player and the rugby player only. I think things have changed in that regard. The back page of the Mirror this morning is Dundalk and it's Manchester United. I won't be bullied. Beside a picture of Solskjaer there. He's not giving up in-demand Pogba without a fight. And we just weren't good enough, says the headline on Dundalk's 0-0 draw with Riga last night.
Back page of The Guardian is... we're back. Morgan warns Australia to be ready for fight. So it's fight and talk from Eoin Morgan ahead of another World Cup semi-final for England today. This time it's their cricketers. New Zealand have reached the cricket final yesterday after they beat India. And then there's pictures of the 4 semi-finalists. As was predicted on this show, Baptista Agut is through to face Djokovic, and it's Federer and Nadal in the other semi-final. But Murray and Williams were beaten in the doubles.
Yeah, watching a bit of it yesterday, it's... their opponents really up against it when it came to the baying crowd at Wimbledon yesterday afternoon. There was like a moment when Serena was carrying Andy Murray, which was kind of interesting to see given her singles commitment at the moment as well. And it's weird to actually kind of be watching this and just seeing the huge crowd that are there for a doubles side at the moment and the huge coverage that the doubles competition is getting. So it's great for that particular competition, but they were outclassed really in the third set yesterday, down 4-love at one point in that particular set. So maybe they just didn't have the legs. I guess it's kind of tough when Murray's coming back from injury. Serena's also competing in the singles competition as well to maintain that. It is a tennis picture as well on the back page of the Times this morning. There's Nadal and Federer, and you've also got Morgan saying we're back to best. England bidding for first World Cup final in 27 years. New Zealand awaiting after an incredible win against India yesterday. Bruce asks for Newcastle talks. Meanwhile, this is from Paul Joyce. He's asked Sheffield Wednesday for permission to speak to Newcastle United about becoming their new manager. And Arsenal player racially abused. This is a story that's been doing the rounds, and Martin Ziegler has it this morning for the Times. Arsenal condemning as unacceptable an incident that forced one of their young defenders to leave the field of play in tears after being abused in a match in Germany. So this is Jordan Ozay Tutu. He's a 20-year-old fullback, and he's on loan in Germany up against St. Gallen, the Swiss side, and racially abused by an opponent, it seems. I'm very disappointed about what happened. He said, no one should ever be subject to any discrimination, and it is really hard to understand how a fellow professional footballer could do this. The front page of the Telegraph this morning is now for the big one, and it is a picture of Federer and Nadal going head-to-head in the semi-final. You should watch this because who knows how many more times we're actually going to get to see it. And this time we'll get it right, says Morgan. Captain hits back at critics as England prepare for World Cup semi with Australia. And then the back page of the Telegraph is perhaps the most Telegraph column ever written in history. Tony Jacquelin's huge service to golf merits more recognition than a CBE. It is time Ryder Cup saviour was made a knight. Bend the knee! Bend the knee! The Irish Times this morning goes with...
Be asked to bend the knee, obviously. It's different from Game of Thrones. The Queen asks you to bend the knee, and then you're like, oh yeah. I suppose...
No, Daenerys asked John to bend the knee plenty of times.
Oh,
so Daenerys and Queen Elizabeth II are basically the same person.
Maybe he was pretty happy, yeah. Sure, they all end the same, don't they?
what you're saying Queen Elizabeth II is...
I'm not going to miss that.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. We all die in the end, Eoin.
Back page of Sports Thursday the lead in Sports Thursday, the Irish Times, is Dundalk left with plenty to do after a frustrating night, and Origi ends doubts over his future at Liverpool, and Solskjaer telling Monterrey players that United will not be pressurised into selling. Trump's message is excluding people, says Megan Rapinoe, speaking in New York yesterday, and then a couple of other stories there regarding the Irish sides in Europe.
Big Ben set to strike Master Blaster to help England into World Cup final, and this is Ben Stokes, who they think is going to fire England to glory today against Australia in the World Cup semi-final. And the Black Caps are 2-1 to win the World Cup, so that's New Zealand are now 2-1 to lift the trophy, which I think is probably pretty good odds, right? Because they're going to be playing either England or Australia in the final, and you're getting 2-1 about it.
After
2-horse race,
especially after knocking India out. And the way they bowled yesterday, you'd imagine that that's a very, very good bet. But you probably do make them, if it's a three-way mini league, you probably make Australia and England slight favourites ahead of them. So maybe that's why those odds are there. The Irish Examiner then finally is true to ourselves. Clancy vows Cork will go at Dubs. I love these quotes this morning from Tomas Clancy, holding nothing back, saying they're going to play their own game. That's pretty confident. He thinks they're going to be there or thereabouts against Dublin, which is great to hear somebody actually saying that before game against Dublin. Back page of the Irish Examiner sports section is Tommy Martin's column saying, whisper it, but maybe Gaelic football has cured itself. A couple of great analogies on this.
I mean, here's the thing, it hasn't obviously cured itself to the point that they're going to introduce a new back pass rule and tamper with the rules again, even though all that was required was the cycle of defensive football to be gone through, as all sports go through defensive cycles as they reach maturity. And it's a good point. I think he's right. Go on.
He says, in relation to some specific teams, he says, Clare continue their role as the hard-working kid who always has his study done but falls just short of the points for medicine. He says, Tyrone, meanwhile, bounce back into qualifiers in that way they always do, which is basically a Rocky montage where the hero beats up on meat carcasses while plotting redemption in the final act. And then Mayo are the good time party guy who everybody loves to have around until they have no one has anything to say to each other, and then everyone is staring intently at their taxi app, which is probably true. It's kind and true to Mayo this morning. And the question he asks here is, have all the review committees into saving football been wasting their time?
Yeah.
Which they may have been when it comes to
apparently
rules
they have, because the president has decided that there's only two ways to save football, and that the two proposals about tiered football championships that he's putting forward. A lot of massive reaction really from Cork people yesterday about the John Horan comments that we spoke about on the show yesterday. I don't know if you saw any of the antipathy towards him on social media, but it was a real kind of sense from Cork fans that we're Cork supporters. Of course we're going to support the footballers. Don't be ridiculous. And his assertion that Dublin generally get the Saturday evening throw-in was like, why? They were like, why? Because they're Dublin? Which is exactly the whole point of entitlement. When you get something, you assume you have it forever because it's yours in a shared relationship, which the GAA is supposed to be. So massive backlash, I would say, against his comments yesterday, which kind of seems to be the way at the moment. Not a particularly popular president, is he, among the rank and file GAA members? No,
he's certainly putting himself out there with a lot of the things he's saying as well, in terms of messages that kind of, I guess, are we judging him as a Dublin man because he is a Dublin man in terms of the comments he's saying, or are we judging him as a pro-Dublin man because of the actual content of what he's saying? It's hard to tell. It does seem that what was said at the weekend does seem that there is kind of a slight leaning towards the Dubs here in terms of actually giving them that entitlement of that Saturday night 7 o'clock game. Nobody else can play that game if Dublin are still involved.
I think there was the germ of a point that what we were doing was looking after hurling fans because there are neutral hurling fans, and it was too difficult for us to change the games. There was the germ of an argument in that, but instead it was like, couldn't have a triple header, couldn't have the Dubs thrown in at 12, could we? Which literally nobody in their right mind would have suggested. It made absolutely no sense. So when you put straw men up like that, everybody's back gets up straight away and goes, what? Why are you saying that? Anyway, let's move on. Let's get to the meat and drink of today, which is
Sean Cavanagh, yeah. It's great. It's his first column for the Star. It's really, really good. So the back page is embarrassing. Kavanagh leaked Rebel song and clumsy mistake. So this is part 1 of 3, as we mentioned earlier on. Just to touch on this briefly, what he said. He says, Cullum is in the video, so obviously his brother Cullum, and I know he would be similar to myself. He wouldn't be politically minded. I haven't got a clue of the words of the song, and I know rightly Cullum wouldn't either. So he speaks about that, and
we all know the words of the song now. come out, ye other hams, come out and fight me like a man.
Exactly. I mean, he's obviously never seen the ad. They don't have that channel in the Cavanagh household, perhaps. He says, I would hazard a guess that 30 or more lads in that bus at that time probably didn't know the words or didn't know the significance to the song. The younger generation probably wouldn't be that way inclined anyway, which is actually an interesting point. And it's not the same, but it's on a similar vein to what we discussed when we saw Declan Rice and his up the ra comments in his Instagram. Because people are naive to what they actually mean, does that mean that they're okay? And I think in the context of the Tyrone bus incident, I think context is everything, as Declan Bogue described in his article yesterday, and it's worth kind of digging out that piece to actually get the full context of it. We won't get into that again today because there's just too much other good stuff in this Cavanagh column. Before we get into the Kerry supporters, he's talked about Kerry's defence and what you mentioned about Tomas and Gooch talking to him, and he's said that Tomas and Gooch agree with him here, that the Cork team, their performance against the Cork team was an embarrassment in terms of their defence in the Munster final. That's what he was saying with regards to Kerry. He says, I was on the Sunday game on Munster final weekend, and Tomas totally agreed with me that without a defensive plan, Kerry don't look as if they're capable of getting out of their Super 8s group. So that kind of stuff is on the record. And he says, I was on to Gooch a couple of times last year, and he was saying unless they change their defensive massively, there's no way they're going to win stuff. So putting out Gooch's view on what the Kerry defence is. But this is the main headline this morning. Paddy was right. Kerry supporters are animals when they see you as a threat. So he's writing mainly about Killarney in 2012. He says, it was probably my first time in a really full Killarney. This is the qualifier game, by the way, in 2012, round 3, I think, taking place in Killarney. The atmosphere was unreal around it, he says. I was thinking, these are real purists. Then you sit in the stand and you realise Paddy O'Shea was right. They are absolute animals whenever the game was on. The reality was, it was at the end of that team we had through the noughties for 8 or 10 years. Kerry seemed to get their kick out of it anyway. It was really bizarre. They maybe thought they were getting revenge. It was strange that their fans were riled in the terraces. They beat us well. They beat us out the gate, and he thought, Jesus, these guys are absolute dogs, in relation to the Kerry fans. And then I remember, as we were leaving the changing room, walking out into the team bus, there were hundreds of Kerry supporters all clapping us, either side of us as we were walking through. They were backslapping us, yous are great lads, and all this. To me it seemed a wee bit patronising. They had this ability that obviously when they thought we were a threat, they were monsters. And then it was very much, we are the purists of football, tapping us on the back on the way out. Good luck, we just beat you by 10 points. Which is really, this is completely different to how I actually remember the Tyrone reaction at the time in 2012. Like, Tyrone actually issued a statement. The county board issued a statement in 2012 thanking the Kerry support for their reception of the Tyrone team. In particular, their reception of Mickey Hart, who'd gone through a particularly tough summer in 2012. That was at the end of the trial, and the applause that he got. Like, I was just looking back at it this morning, the actual, because I was like, have I got mixed up here? Was I just too entrenched in my Kerry bubble at that point to actually realise that Kerry fans were patronising? But the Tyrone statement at the time was, long after thousands had left Fitzgerald Stadium last Saturday evening, our Tyrone team was getting ready for a bitter journey home. Around 500 Kerry people remained outside the changing area, men and women, old and young. As our people started to board their coach, a ripple of applause met them. That ripple grew and grew, and for long minute after long minute, just went on and on and on. When Mickey Hart appeared, a cheer of support went up. As the coach headed down through Killarney, hundreds on the pavements took over where others had left off, warmly applauding Tyrone. But there is no doubt that Ireland lost a lot and took a lot of wrong turns in the last few years. But if you wanted your faith in decency, respect, honour and dignity restored, then Killarney at about 8 o'clock last Saturday evening was the place to be. Inspirational, unforgettable, classy. So, I think that kind of, that's how I remember it as well. I think the idea that it was patronising and back-patting is a little bit different. I don't think they would kind of resort to patronising. I'm not sure which fans kind of would. I think most people, especially a few hours after a game, an hour after a game, would actually kind of be happy enough in their own results. What if Tyrone had won that game, though? What would the response of the Kerry fans have been? Would there have been clapping and cheering and hooping and hollering? Probably not, no. But I don't think it was patronising. Well, he obviously felt patronised and, can't police his feelings, Owen. What does he feel about the Kerry fans now? Well, he hasn't really kind of said anything about the Kerry fans now. He's still talking about that. He says, during that game, the language some of the Kerry supporters were coming out with, they are very good at portraying themselves as the aristocrats and the beautiful game, and we play football the right way, and we play attacking football and blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah. But deep down, there is a real hardcore to them and a real nastiness, as there probably is to all counties. As there probably is to all counties, kind of thrown in there just as a as a caveat.
I better just. But actually, I don't really mean all counties.
Yeah, he thinks Kerry fans are the nastiest.
How do you feel about this, Owen? How do you feel about this characterization of who you are, your very identity?
I think he's
laid bare for the entire world to see by somebody who knows it and who beat you again and again and again when it mattered. Again and again and again, I say.
Imagine if one of those had actually gone the wrong way for Sean Cavanagh.
But it didn't.
The sour grapes would have been absolutely intolerable at that point.
Yeah, they would. We can only imagine what those sour grapes would be like, Owen.
Well, it's remarkable, isn't it, that he would actually say that was the end of that great Tyrone team. It's almost as if the greater team would have greater longevity, and that Tyrone team obviously kind of faded away after 2008, but obviously Kerry managed to win an All-Ireland again 6 years later with a couple of those stragglers still around from the last decade. Are Kerry supporters nasty? Maybe we are, and you know what? Maybe we should own it. Maybe that's at the nub of why we actually didn't take that much offence when Paddy called us all animals back in the day. Because
he was right.
Maybe there's
what you're saying.
I think animals is a bit strong. Do we treat Kerry players harshly in terms of expectation? Yes, for sure. But we're not going to turn around and say, well, we're always very forgiving. We accept that. I mean, it is what it is. That comes from a basis of winning a lot of All-Irelands. It comes from, unfortunately, a superiority complex that is built up. I'm not going to deny that. But it's the thing that would kind of annoy me is if the tables were turned and people would start denying that they're kind of hard on their own players or nasty to the opposition players.
They're dogs. That's the phrase that sticks out, isn't it?
Yeah. But I think that's a bit harsh.
But they're not.
They're absolute dogs. Do you think Kerry fans are absolute dogs in your opinion? I'm asking you.
And they're not upfront about it. Is the weird thing. He says at least Tyrone are upfront. Everybody knows we're dogs. That's the way we're bred. I think is the phrase. Is it?
Sorry. Yes, I didn't have that one underlined. At least when you come from Tyrone, you know we are going to be dogs from the word go to the end. A strange breed now, I have to say. He says about the Kerry fans. Dogs is way too strong. Kerry sport comes from extremely high expectations, and that comes from a harsh view on a lot of the players. But calling them dogs is just untrue.
I think he means the players, and I think he means that's their style. I think there's a bit about the team, and it's about Mayo as well. So you maybe
this is it was strange that their fans were riled on the terraces. They beat us well. They beat us at the gate, and he thought, Jesus, these guys are absolute dogs. It was hard to know if he does mean the fans or the players.
The team who beat them at the gate or the fans?
Yeah, that he just mentioned before that.
It is hard to know.
And I think the patronising thing is a lot of bollocks, to be quite honest with you. Patronising an opposition team. Who can be bothered hanging around for an hour to patronise a team?
The fans.
The fans.
Well,
come on.
They're waiting around to get their photographs with the Kerry team. They just happen to seize on the opportunity to patronise the opposition. I mean,
come on, applauding a team coming out to the bus.
Let me put it to you like this, right? Mayo sack Killarney at the weekend. They lay waste to it, right? It's a 4-22 to 1-12 victory for them. A bunch of Mayo fans are there afterwards waiting to get their photograph with Killian, who's just broken Gooch's record as the most scoringest forward in all of history. And the Mayo players come out and they're thronged by the fans. They get on the bus departs. Minutes later, the Mayo fans still there milling around in the afterglow of victory. The Kerry team walk out. What response are those Mayo fans giving that Kerry team?
Probably not going to clap.
What do you think they're going to do?
They're probably not going to clap.
What are they going to do? Nothing? Turn their backs on them?
They'll just be like, oh, there's whoever. Might get a selfie if it's like...
They're not going to rub it in?
It's like David Moore or James O'Donoghue or one of the higher profile players.
No rubbing it in? No kind of...
I'd say they might rub it in. It depends how many of the Kerry players are walking out together, and it depends how confident the Mayo fans are in their own ability to rub it into the opposition, because it's something that they've got quite good at over the last couple of years, obviously. But it's not patronising. I just don't understand that. I mean, it takes a lot of effort to stand there and actually make a concerted effort to say, all of us together now, we're going to clap these poor boys back off to Northern Ireland to themselves, because it's a long old road ahead of them. Patronising is not how Kerry people look at Tyrone. Maybe if it was Mayo, there might have been the nub of a point there that maybe Kerry fans, or definitely Kerry fans patronise Mayo for a long time. That's changed.
You can't patronise a team who are much better than you. It's true. I understand that. Good point. Lorcan O'Toole on YouTube says, didn't take offence, question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark. Paddy had to resign on the back of it, didn't he? National uproar when Paddy called his animals.
I'm kind of speaking for myself, to be honest.
Aye.
I didn't take offence to Paddy calling me an animal or calling it. A lot of people didn't take offence. It's definitely reflected on with a large degree of humour at this point.
No, yeah, but it was a massive uproar.
It wasn't really, Jared. Come on, it was this is a stupid thing to say. like, Paddy would have 100%. When was it said? Before the 2003 season?
I'm not sure. I don't remember the exact.
Like, Paddy would have definitely survived if that game against Tyrone had been a win for them in 2003, but it wasn't, and he was treated really harshly because of that. Probably should have been allowed to stay on, in my view. And was that down to the animals comment? Maybe part of it was, but I don't. Surely the county board didn't react in that way.
All right. Okay. County board is noted for their decency in all matters when it comes to public opinion.
Anyway, the patronising thing is nonsense.
Irish News. The cover here this morning of the Irish News is Brennan spurred by tip miss. Jamie's Ulster scoring spree atones for a third disappointment. And not too rosy for the Blues is the picture above from one of the European games last night. Gaelic Life this week cover is Tyrone and Donegal are primed and ready for the Super 8 series Supermen. And I can't see who I was a hard man. Oh, Antrim's Tony Scullion recounts the many battles fought as player with both managers and opponents. I was a hard man to manage. And then the Mirror from the UK this morning is next. Ole Bow, I won't be bullied in Celtic Pogba or anyone else, and we'll shut you up, KP. Fired up Morgan's ready to batter Aussies in semi and silence all the critics. And then finally for now, the Star is you can't bully us. Ole digs in over Pogba transfer saga, and Eoin plots final fling to silence his critics. And then Nathan Murphy sent us this from the pub in Donegal last night after they'd flown up there in Kevin Cassidy's pub. There was a Super Value Roadshow last night. We'll be bringing you the good stuff from that today and tomorrow. Scoring more and conceding less will be the key. Murphy hopeful that side can keep improving. I don't know, is this the Democrat or what newspaper it's from, but Donegal Post. It's from the Donegal Post. So, you know, it's, I mean, they're not taking any risks of pissing off their most important player in the Post by putting that up.
I meant to say as well, just in relation to the Mayo fans thing earlier, the key point here about them and coming down to Killarney, I saw that they're building rooftop bars in Killarney. Killarney's turned into Grand Canal Dock as a result of the fact that Mayo fans are coming down there. Like, it's a fantastic opportunity for everybody in the town to
gouge them,
to see the beauty of the Mayo fans up close and personal. I just wanted to put that out there. They're fantastic for the exchequer. They're fantastic for the town. It'll be great to see you. You're more than welcome. It'd be fantastic to see all the Mayo boys and girls all come down and in our backyard, right where we have them, and just pay for about 10 pints on your way out.